Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Outer Realm Thursday night edition with myself, Michelle Desrochers, minus my little bubbly companion tonight, Amelia Pisano. She's got some things going on, so we're going to send her some love and well wishes and lots of hugs and hope that she has a really good evening. We are broadcasting live here tonight via the International Public Radio here on United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. This evening's segment and every evening segment is fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee. So thank you, Folgers. We love you, love you, we love you. Tonight, we welcome back Chris Stiles to the show, and we will be discussing UFOs. And for those of you who missed the first show, he was basically talking about Canada's Roswell, which is Shag Harbour. So we're going to touch on that a little bit just for those of you who missed it. And then we're going to get into some Canadian UFO sightings and stories and stuff that he's got documented. So that should be a lot of fun. In order to participate in tonight's show, you will have to head over to UFO Paranormal. And of course, we've got UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, and we're on Twitch, and we're on, let's see, what else? We're on PitTube, we're on Twitter, we're on all of the networks, Facebook pages. I will be able to see all of your comments in the stream. I will not be able to type back to you because that would be very rude of me, but I will address everything as we go along. So please just feel free to give your questions or comments, and I will definitely make a point of getting back to it. So let's hopefully settle ourselves in, have a really great segment with Mr. Chris Stiles. And as soon as he arrives, we will pop him in and get the party started. There he is. How are you? I don't hear you. Yeah, go on the bottom and just unmute. Yeah. Unmute your mic. Nope, you're muted. Oh, can't hear you. No. Nope. Is your mic on? Maybe you have to give this permission to use it. Have you done that? Yeah, I might have to play around a little bit. See at the bottom where it says camera and the microphone at the very bottom? Maybe just click on that and see. You may have to just give your permission for the program to use it. Yeah. I know. It's fine. Oh, hey, Wayne. Glad you made it. Did you click on the very bottom where it says Cam and Mike? Yeah. Because usually if you've never used this, I thought you've used this before with it. You have, yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought too. We were on StreamYard. I don't know. Camera looks great. We just need to get your sound. Hi, Zach man. How are you? Are you in your settings? Is everything good with it? Maybe do test or something. I don't know. Do you want to try again? Do you want to pop out? Do it. Okay, let's do that. We're going to pop out. I will let Joe know, and we'll bring you back in. So maybe you might have to come in. Yeah, let's hope we can get that going. I want to hear all those amazing stories you have to say. Right? Okay, I'm just going to message Joe, and he needs to come back in. So let's just sort of watch out for that. And I will message him here also. Sorry about that, guys. This is just not cool. He needs to come back in. All right. So Doing good. Interesting day, to put it positively. Wow, Zach, I think we're right along there with you. It's been a very interesting day, to say the least, but it's been a crazy day. It's just been like insanity on the roads. For Thursday, it was just sort of like, what the heck? It's not the weekend. Well, maybe it is the weekend for some people. I don't know. Tonight we're going to attempt to get Chris on. I'm not quite sure he's used the program before. Maybe it's just a little glitch from his side. But, we're going to talk a little bit about the disclosure, because, the world really watched when the U.S. decided to come out with their disclosure, and they did have their preliminary disclosure, and a lot of people are on the fence with it. A lot of people aren't really happy with it, but the Senate still has to go through everything. I think you're going to start seeing a little bit more in the fall, when everybody gets back in there and starts really digging into this thing. But the world was watching, and what people don't realize is not everybody hides information from their people. France, for example, is very forthcoming. They don't really hide anything. They see it. There it is. It's amazing just how out of the open there. Are you back? No. I have feedback now. So it's your volume up? Yeah, I got mega feedback.
Okay, that's weird.
Ooh, mega feedback.
Yeah, no, that's weird. What's going on here? Let's see.
I don't know, because I have feedback from everybody here. Okay, that's a bit better. No feedback. Oh, we lost them. Oh,
Yeah, he's got to reconnect.
okay. Yeah, I don't know. He's going to have to try to work that out.
It's weird. It's a weird, strange evening. It figures y'all connect
We
so
see
strong.
3 screens. People are seeing 3 screens. Is that on?
3 screens, right? Oh, that's because I'm on. No, it's good.
I'm messing everybody all up.
They'll see my fingers now.
Oh,
Sorry,
there we
guys.
go. See, there you go. Just the computer.
That's my camera facing at the screen, because y'all can't see that.
That's what
Someone
goes. I
see me
can
right
hear
now,
him.
they would be scared. Okay,
Oh, you can hear him, but we don't have him.
we're gonna drop him back in now. Let me drop myself.
Okay, let's try that. I still can't hear you. Just beat it up. Just get the crap out of it. I don't know. That's just. I have feedback again. I still have mega feedback, and it's only when you're on, Chris. So, okay, good. See, feedback is gone. Okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Headphones. Let's try that and hope for the best. Anyway, like I was saying, not everybody. Oh, come on, feedback again. Not everybody keeps things from the public. France doesn't. They're pretty much open book, wide open. Russia actually disclosed a long time ago, which was a very big surprise. And there's tons of stories about their military out there, with not just UAPs and UFOs, but also with extraterrestrials. So what's up with the... Well, there we go. No, can't hear you. I don't know, but I got feedback still. Lots of feedback, Joe. So I don't know, but I do have a whole whack of feedback.
Maybe a restart on a computer might do it.
Do we want to restart? Because then I'll have to post all the links. Or is it just Chris that has to restart?
The last thing is he probably just needs to restart his computer.
Okay, yeah, try to restart. We'll bring you back in. Okay, that's okay. That sounds good. All right. Okay. So see, now I have no feedback. So that's from...
That's weirding me out. So there's something that's picking up. He's got a mic open somewhere. It's picking up, but it's not picking him up.
Yeah, that's really strange.
You know what it might be? It might be a setting. It's probably a setting that's off on his computer somewhere.
Well, maybe it'll fix itself. I
Yes, a
don't
lot
know.
of time. Well,
So,
a lot of times restarts will go back to the original setting. So
yeah, because he's got some really
There's
great.
entertainment.
Oh, that could be a thing. And we talk about he's got really great Canadian stories, and hopefully we'll get a chance to get to them because it comes to UFOs, you don't really hear a lot about Canada. Get a lot about Shag Harbour. I want to hear a little bit about that for those of you who missed it. That's kind of like our Roswell. So, you know, for those of you who missed it, it was a really, really great story. And we do have some really interesting stories here. I don't want to just kind of say where I am, obviously, but we do have a lot of UFO sightings. And we also have a lot of really strange anomalies. It's like clouds that just seem to be that come out of nowhere. No storms, nothing. And they seem to be sort of round and they're just purging. Like you see lights just flashing out of them. And it's like, okay, your logical self says, well, that looks like it could be lightning, but it's just a really strange formation. And all the lightning seems to be inside of it. And you can almost time it. It's just really, really bizarre. And you have light anomalies that just sort of like huge, just fly across the road in front of you. I mean, that happened to us one night coming down along the river. And this huge anomaly went over the road and it was so high, it was higher than a stop sign. So, I mean, I don't know. How tall are those things? Like 8 feet? It's just something really ridiculous. And we're thinking, was that a deer? And you look over to the left, I mean, and it's a straight drop down a really long ways, like 100 feet easy, maybe more. And a deer would need room to, they'd have to pick up speed to be able to leap. But I don't think they could do it that high. So then when you look beside you, there's nothing there. And this thing was completely translucent. And it was almost like an iridescent bag that just kind of went across, but yet it was not. And nobody wants to be that guy. So it was quiet. But we look at each other. It's like, did you actually see that? It's like, oh my God, I did see that. Thank God it wasn't only me. And there's been a lot of weird stuff like that. We've had like lights just go through the house, bright lights. And it's like, what the heck was that? We're not far, from the river and the falls and things like that. So I'm giving it away a little bit, people. And there was another event where something came through the dining room window. Now, this house has walls that are about 3 feet thick. So when the windows shake and something literally goes past you through the house and hits another set of windows and they start shaking, that's sort of something. So as if it wasn't weird enough, I had a radio show that night and we were in a studio at that time. We were in a radio station at that time. And, we get a message from the neighbor who basically says there's all this smoke coming out of the chimney, and he goes, okay, I'm going to go over there and check it out. And the house is flooding. Something hit the house. And this is just next door. So a car hit the house, but it's such a humongous piece of property from that corner. You don't just hit the house. So we started wondering, did something startle the driver maybe? This is the middle of the day. So, there's just a lot of things that go on in this area. People have sightings all the time. Wayne has seen UFOs just flying up out of the gorge, just up it goes. And it's like, oh, okay, there it is. And then we're not actually far from a military base in the US here. And usually when there are sightings, you hear them taking off, whether it be one of their jets, whether it be one of the helicopters. So you always sort of have an idea that you actually really saw something when the military takes off after it. It's like, okay, there's something on. This is a thing. There it is. So if we're getting all these sightings, one has to wonder, what's in them? What we all see UFOs, unidentified flying object, could be anything really. It could be an air balloon, even though drones could be. But when you start having other experiences, hearing things in the house, and the house is haunted. The house is haunted. So we're very diligent about the sounds. We know the sounds that our spirits make. They're pretty habitual. We know, of course, being that I've been in the field for 18 years, something comes in here, I pretty much have an idea when, something is right, something isn't. As a medium, I can usually tell what it is. But sometimes there are things you just don't pick up on. And you see little things out of the corner of your eye, and I'm starting to wonder, who's visiting. So, as you've heard me say before on the show, I woke up. I won't even say I woke up. I hadn't even fallen asleep yet. I was ready to go to bed, and it was quite late, maybe about 1 a.m. So it's not like it was like 5 or anything like that. And I look over, and there's a gray, probably about between 4 and 5 feet tall, and I got fully awake, and all I remember saying was nope. And I rolled over, went back to bed, thinking, yeah, I'm good. I'm just not quite ready for this interaction. So that was sort of it for me. But I have had memories of stuff like this since being a child. I think it's just been a matter of whether or not I was going to get to the point where I was going to embrace it. I remember as a child always being very interested in looking to the stars. My grandfather used to have a telescope and would look to the stars. My family just did weird stuff like that, look to the stars. Well, there's got to be something, with that. So definitely a lineage thing, without a doubt. I have no doubt about that. But, when I started doing research, in the paranormal, I think it's just a matter of time before you end up going over to ufology. I think you just start looking for different answers. I've had a lot of clients that I have worked with over the years who have had sightings of UFOs or aliens on their property. And I started really delving into different connections. And I thought, well, is it portals? Is it a portal? Are they sharing a portal? Are we back? I still don't have you. I can't hear you. I don't even know. But I have no more feedback. Yeah, you can. Yeah, try. For sure. We could just do voice if you want. How about that? If you can, through your phone, or you can click the link I sent you on your phone. How about that? Do that. So, yeah, go to your email, click on the link. And then you can come through, and you can come through in video if you want. And then, Joe can just let you back in. How does that sound? Where there's a will, there's a way, and there's a cell phone. That always works. I know. I've had one of those days also. I know. I know. Maybe it's a moon cycle or something. The planets are lining up in the wrong way. I don't know. But yeah, definitely try. What? Is it gone? You want me to send it back to you? Okay. I'm going to do that. I'm going to send that back to you right now. Okay. I'm doing it. That's it. Okay. There we go. Sending it now. All right, coming at you. Let's try that one. This really is an adventure. I know. My day's been the same. I'm sitting here talking about all of my, ET experiences while we're waiting. It should come. It just sent. It shows sent. Yeah. Okay. So try that, and then we can just drop. Bring you in on the one and drop you in out of the other, or you can just talk to me that way. Yeah. So Joe, you'll have to let him in again if that's okay. Can you get in? You just have to click on it with your cell phone. Really? It's just this crazy. I don't know. Oh, oh, come on. That's crazy. That's crazy. You should be able to just click on it and it'll just bring you right in. A lot of people come on and use their cell phones. Maybe somebody just doesn't want you talking. I don't know. I don't know if we can call through that way. I think you have to, yeah, kind of do it through your camera. And I can't just stop the show to do another format. I do apologize. That's just not cool. It should just click on and bring you right in. I don't know. Is it happening? It might be. All right. Woohoo. Yeah, as soon as it brings you in, you should be a-okay. Yeah, as what Wayne says, that's what I'm thinking on the not wanting him to talk. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, 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 dun. Maybe, maybe, maybe. God, we had so much good stuff planned. Is it happening? I can't hear you at all. We have to let you in. Joe, he's trying to click in again. Here we are. He's trying to get in, I think, through his cell phone, which isn't the first time. I mean, our hosts do it. Is there any?
As long as he's not on Safari, he's probably all
Oh,
right.
if you're on no, use Chrome. Yeah, use Google
Yeah,
Chrome.
Google's the best way to do it. For some reason, it recognizes Google.
Yeah, copy and paste the link to Google Chrome if you can, if you have it on your phone. I don't know. It's like playing charades. This is great. I don't know. Yeah, I can't hear you. Are you on Chrome? Or...
I tell you what. Before you mess with your phone, look underneath where it says camera and mic, right there underneath your picture, and it's got a little cog wheel on it. Click it, and look and see it. It's going to say camera underneath. It's going to say click it to audio, and you can see what mic you're using. It'll tell you if you have it's a little thing in there. You can change the mic setting. It's probably on the wrong mic setting. Is what the problem is.
Oh, you mean for the computer?
Yeah. So he can just click on you can click on the cog and mic right there. See, it says mute, stop, cam and mic. Click on the one that says cam and mic. And then when you get in there, click on the one that says audio, and you're going to see one at the top. It says mic. And it's a pop-down box, and it'll probably have a list of different mics you can use. You might want to go through them and see which one it is, because obviously yours isn't on. So,
can you hear me now?
Oh,
yeah, we got you. There you go.
There we go.
Sorry, guys.
Eureka!
Wow.
I forgot that feature was in there. I just remember while we were talking. Anyway, let me get out of here.
I'm so sorry. I've never had this happen before, and an hour before your show, I was on a Canadian show and had no issues.
Oh my gosh,
haven't touched any. I'm so sorry about that, Michelle.
No, that's okay.
The first time. Wow.
Hey, believe me, I can talk and talk and talk. And I was just talking about the experiences that we have here in the falls with crazy. Oh, I'm getting feedback again. There. Nope.
Is that better?
I have a little bit, but it's not too bad.
Here, now we'll go to this.
Okay. Yeah, we have echo. Absolutely. We're working on that. Thank you. There.
that
Nope,
better?
no more echo. It's perfect. I can
No
still
more.
hear you.
Okay, great. Okay.
Wow. So,
That was too hard, you know?
well, I'm glad that you actually made it because it's
Oh,
just like
yeah. Well, you never give up, eh? But, no.
I know you just have to keep going. But I'm glad. It's just very, very weird because it's just a link, and as long as you give it permission to use it, you should be able
Oh,
to more than log in. Better. There we go.
I've had
Okay.
several things
Such
ever
is
since
live
it wanted to.
radio.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ever since it wanted to go to Windows 11, I've had these little glitches, you know?
But usually, though, the only one that StreamYard does not get along with is Safari, unfortunately.
No, this is Window on Chrome, you know?
Ah, so you should be okay. But I'm glad it's all good now.
Anyway,
Yeah, I
moving
know.
along.
Woohoo.
Moving along.
So how have you been keeping?
Oh, I'm good. I'm fine.
Except for
I
now.
staying out of staying out of trouble. Had both shots of MRA vaccine, etc.,
Ah, there we
etc. That's
go.
good. Oh yes,
There we
yeah,
go.
yeah. The
Oh, you need to turn
government's
your volume up a bit, apparently, I'm told in chat.
all right.
God, pushy people, eh?
Is that working? Are we getting there?
A little, we're getting there.
More?
More.
How's that?
That's better, right, guys? Can you hear him okay? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go
All
with
right.
it. That'll tell us if it's not.
Now you're distorted, but I can live with it. I grew
Okay,
up in
there's
a
like
rock
more,
and roll band,
more,
so you know.
more. You need it more? Can you just pop it up to the top?
Yeah. Like there we go. Let's see if we can get more out of this setting here. Afraid to.
It's so hard because people don't realize we can't just do sound checks and stuff like that because there are shows that come on before us and the links change slightly
Is
with
that
every
better?
show.
Is that better?
Yeah, I hear you good.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
we can hear a bit
Oh
faintly.
well. As long as you and I can hear.
I know it doesn't matter if people want to listen to archives afterwards.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I can hear you guys. Okay, you guys can hear, I hope. So for those who did not get to tune in the first time, can we touch a bit before we get into anything on let's say Shag Harbor?
Well, yeah. Whatever you want. So you want to start a bit with Shag Harbour.
I just want to recap it. Yeah,
So just very briefly, what happened in the beginning, or are we
sure.
going back to the start?
Yeah,
Sure.
this is a
Okay.
big event. This is like our Roswell.
Well, yeah, in Canada, it's often called Canada's Roswell. At least that's what the TV producers seem to like when they come to town. Okay, it's October the 4th, 1967, right? Canada's centennial year. We were 100 years old, the summer of love and all that. And but it was past summer, and it was October the 4th, and it was a clear, cool night at about 11:20. The moon had already set, and picture a fishing village right by the coast on Old Highway 3 here in Nova Scotia. There are no street lights, things are very dark. The atmosphere is very clear. People tell me you could see sixth magnitude stars without binoculars. You know, it was that kind of night,
Mm,
which is rare in Nova Scotia. You know, we're often in a fog bank here, right?
right.
Anyway, if you were outside around 11:20, people that looked up would have seen a series of flashing lights move in from an easterly direction at first. And so, in other words, from inland. And they flashed in an unusual pattern, not reminiscent of commercial air traffic. There were four lights, and they went one, two, three, four, and then they would flash once all together. This pattern would repeat over and over. People that were out driving around and saw this, heard no noise or whatever. The object first moved over the water of the Sound, which is what the locals call Shag Harbour. It hovered there for several minutes, and then it tilted to a 45-degree angle, descended rapidly to the water's surface, and produced a bright flash, and some say a bit of a sound upon impact. Immediately, 7 witnesses called the nearby Royal Canadian Mounted Police Detachment in Barrington, Nova Scotia, and they responded to the scene. And when the RCMP got there, a crowd was already forming of witnesses. And all those calls, one of the unique things about this case that called the RCMP detachment is that nobody reported a UFO. All the calls were panicky and simply that we've seen some lights go down, we think a plane may have crashed in the Sound.
Hmm.
Now, when the RCMP arrived on the scene, there was already a crowd, like say, by what locals called the Moss plant. It was a little fish processing plant, and it did things like Irish moss, which back in the day was used to thicken ice cream. Had a commercial use. Anyway, one of those officers had been out on highway patrol before and was on nearby Cape Sable Island, where there's a causeway going over to it. He actually seen the UFO both in the air and on the water. So, as you're guessing, the crowd is still there. When the RCMP arrived, eventually there would be 3 officers. 2 came directly from the detachment. The UFO, which now appears as a pale dome of yellow light and not a flashing sequence, is still floating upon the water. They commandeer 2 local boats and attempt to reach it, but the object either submerges or disappears before they can reach it. They contact the Rescue Coordination Center in Halifax, nearby military bases, and the Coast Guard responds with a lifeboat from a life station that's located in Clark's Harbour, which is 12 miles away. It's so quiet in this fishing village, by the way, when the engines start up 12 miles away, they can hear that in Shag Harbour.
Wow.
Because, of course, these guys are just motoring there. The concerns are for the possibility of survivors and human life, right? Remember, all that was reported was a plane crash, and they just make it to the scene post-haste. When they get there, the lifeboat and the 2 civilian boats that are commandeered by Mounties that head out on the water, what they find is a streak of dense yellow foam that's 80 feet in length and about half a mile long, and it appeared that the object was heading toward open sea. And the RCMP made some really interesting observations. One of the Mounties took his field glasses out of the trunk of the car, and he was watching, and when this thing was still floating on the surface, first of all, he thought it was moving under its own power, not merely drifting in the ebb tide. And it passed by a large local buoy that's moored there to this day, that's known as the Budget Buoy. And when it passed in front of it, it completely eclipsed that, which means it had to stand at least 8 feet out of the water, above the water line. So this indicates something with some size.
Right.
So one of the most interesting things is we just recently found a witness that hadn't lost sight of it from the highway behind the tree line. The lightkeeper's wife, we now know, was awake on the island that night. In fact, she woke him. She looked, saw it enter the water, and she kept staring at it. When she first entered it, she thought, oh my God, something's going to crash in the water. And like everybody else, she just saw the lights. But at the moment that the UFO broke the surface and the light washed back, it caused the lights to reflect back on it, and she could see that it was a large disc. No fuselage, no nose. And she didn't know what to make of it, but of course everybody then just went into rescue panic mode, right?
Right.
The search continued till about 3 a.m., got called off and resumed at first light. Eventually word got to Canadian Forces headquarters, and underwater was searched. It was ordered through Maritime Command, which involved the Navy, and that went on from October the 4th was a Wednesday night. This continued to last light on Sunday evening, at which time the search was terminated. A press release was out the next day saying, we never found anything. Guess it was one of those things, never knew what we were looking for. But everybody was in agreement that an object at least 60 feet in length had entered, or across in diameter, as it says in the UFO reports, had entered the water. And, there were no later missing aircraft. The water in the sound is very shallow. People were going over for days too, just with their fish finders. Even after the Navy had stopped doing the search. And that's what happened initially at the opening thing. So where would you like to go from here? Questions? Jump ahead?
Yeah. Well, hey, it's your show, man. Wherever you want to take it.
Well, I'm doing whatever. It's just whatever.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a recap because it really isn't something that you hear about. There's not a lot out there on Shag Harbour.
Well, no, and it's funny because there's been several featured documentaries, not as many as, say, a case like Roswell.
Sure.
Not everybody, in big U.S. production companies is interested in a foreign case.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I get much more inquiry from Spain and Japan and other spots around the world, than I do from the U.S.,
That's crazy.
But, I recently just did another Canadian series, a few episodes. It'll be coming out.
Awesome.
Soon.
Yeah, let's jump to that.
It's not a show I'm familiar with. I think it's new. I think it's going to be called Encounter UFO, and it's on something that I don't have in my local cable system called the T&E network. I got to be careful
The
with
T
those
and
initials.
E is
T&E, I'm not familiar with them.
T and
But
E. Oh, okay.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
so
that's
that's
a,
coming
that's a
up in the
pretty
next
big.
month or
Trying
two.
to
Yeah,
get it on your cable.
unfamiliar here on my Bell system. So,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I thought I
Wow.
had all the channels, but I guess not. I should do a scan again
They
and
do
see.
all the paranormal ones in Canada. I've done all
Yeah.
kinds, and I never had it either because I have American television, even though I'm
Hmm.
here. And it's like I've never got to watch myself on television until it got syndicated to the U.S.
Well, about half the things I do too, particularly the overseas things, never do show here. In fact, some of the U.S. stuff has never shown here.
Hmm.
I think the funniest thing is I had a relative once who was stationed in Moscow as a protocol officer with NATO, and he called me up. He says, "You're not going to believe this. I'm watching TV in Moscow, and you're on TV speaking
I
Russian."
know. I love the international stuff. It's like, really?
Yeah,
How'd I do?
and
Because
I
I
said,
haven't even been able to see it.
Send me a clip. I want to hear myself speaking Russian. What kind
that
of
that would be
voice they
cool.
would have assigned me. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah. That was cool.
Right. I can always tell when one of my shows have aired somewhere in the world because all of a sudden I have an influx of friend requests from certain areas. I'm like, oh,
Well,
something must be on.
one of the things I like is when there's a rerun. I can tell because there's a little surge in Amazon book sales
There you
on
go.
my account for the newer of the two books I co-authored. So that was it. And there's always, and if I do a search afterwards, I usually find there's been a rerun. That's one way to tell. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
that's nice.
Absolutely.
Catching a little on the back end then.
So before we get into some of our Canadian content because there's not a whole lot of it out there apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is your take on disclosure? Because I mean, it's American, it's not Canadian, but the whole world really was
Yeah,
watching for this.
yeah. It's funny. Earlier tonight, I spoke through Zoom with Chris Wachowski about this on a broadcast he was doing, actually.
Hmm.
And there are people here that are very excited about it, very pro. I am not one of them, and I can elaborate. I can tell you why.
Yes.
Um, and let me put it this way. First of all, I have lots of friends and colleagues that are very much within that movement, including my last co-author is very much Graham Sims.
Mm.
But I am not. And here's the thing. At the same time, I do believe that the government has information they've not released, and no more. I'm not saying that, but I certainly do not believe that we have like certain knowledge or treaties with the aliens, or they have the answers, or things tucked away in hangars, right? I'll give you just one good example why I'm very dubious about it. And by the way, I must say my disclosure friends are very kind, and they know with all sincerity I tell them, you know what? I hope I'm wrong on this one. Because I don't care where we get the answers as long as they're certain. I hope someday they rub my nose in it.
Yeah,
And they just laugh. They take it well.
I
But they
agree.
know where I'm coming from. No personal attacks or anything,
Hmm.
right? Here's the thing. I mean, I used to argue with this with Stanton Friedman. God, I miss him. But he was just one province over, and when I'd go borrow boxes of documents from his basement, here's one of the things when disclosure would come up. The only thing him and I, and it came sideways, like at a tangent from us, when I would question something about MJ12. I was okay with Roswell. I was okay with, most of his work. Him and I got along great, worked on things together. But, I was very dubious about, some of the things about MJ12 and the trouble and with some of the documents. And he would talk about them to me, the ones that he said, well, that one's in my gray basket, Chris, is what he used to say. But here's something to come up. I told him a funny story because, I can't remember, I think it was 96. I was down in North Carolina, and after a conference, somehow I ended up going to a movie with Phil Klass. Believe it or not, he invited me to supper or something. And I can remember the movie was just, and there was a group of others, but he was amongst them, and he was talking to me because he really liked my presentation on Shag Harbour. And unlike Stanton, he told me he remembered the case well, and he seemed to. And he actually admitted to me, he said, Chris, He said, something did happen there. He says, I'll probably put something on one of my blogs or websites. Don't let that bother you. He goes. He was very gracious about it, and I just laughed, right? Anyway, we went and seen that movie that had come out, not one of my favorites, Independence Day.
Right.
I don't know if
I
you've seen
actually
that.
liked it.
Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you.
It's out there, but it was hilarious.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
must admit, I liked Will Smith's line, like "Welcome to Earth." I thought, well, he's been warned. That poor
Right.
alien.
Mhm.
The other one, and here's the whole point of what it leads up where I get into it, was Stanton about MJ12, and I talked about this. I brought this up to Chris Rakowski tonight. Is that after this, and I told Stanton that, he just rolled his eyes when I said I hit supper with Phil Class when I was down south last time, and he said, well, that must have been enlightening. And I said, you know what, he asked me what I thought in that scene where the actor, it was Bill Pullman, wasn't it, plays the president,
Mhm.
and he
That's right.
yeah, he asked Zates, how come I didn't know about the aliens, right after the invasion begins, right? How come I didn't know? And they say, well, we're sorry, sir, but you didn't have a high enough security clearance.
That's
And
true.
he's the president. And
Yeah.
Class said, you know what, it could work that way down here. And I thought, really? I said, but can't the commander-in-chief or president fire people and put directors into these things, right? And then something dawned on me, and I asked Stanton, and he had trouble with this one, and I don't think he ever forgave me for the question. But I said to him, I said, one of the names that bothers me on the list of purported members of MJ12 more than the others, and he was guessing, and he said, Donald Menzel. I was like, no, and he named a bunch of them. I said, Roscoe Hillenkoetter. And he said, Roscoe. I said, yeah, it bothers me that Roscoe's name's there, and here's why. I said, he had quite the naval career. He rose to rear admiral, did intelligence with them mostly, but, he served in warships in the big war, right?
Hmm.
But here's the other thing. He was the first director of the CIA, and he assumed that position just before the Kenneth Arnold sighting and before Roswell.
Hmm.
He's the purported member on MJ12. When he retired, and in around 1960, he sat on the board with NICAP, right, which was the largest UFO group at the time, wrote a letter to Congress, did interviews in the New York Times, and cried out for disclosure. Well, shouldn't he have known, if anybody, even if the intelligence community had hid this, right, from the president, or presidents they didn't trust or they didn't think would be two-term, or
Right.
were Democrats. I don't know how that works.
Unlike Nixon, who's bringing in Jackie Gleason. Look at the aliens.
Yeah.
Scarred
Well,
poor Jackie Gleason for life.
no, but if anybody would have known in the U.S., wouldn't it have been Roscoe
I would
Hillenkoetter?
I would think so. I would
But
think
all
so.
his activity up until his death, and by the way, he was even alive when the first Roswell book came out, The Roswell Incident,
Hmm.
which was written by Charles Berlitz and William Moore, right?
Right.
All the
Right.
research was done by Stanton Friedman. He was paid but uncredited for it in the book,
Mm.
right? And, it seemed like in all these interviews and whatever, and for people that knew him, I spoke to people when they were still around, like Richard Hall, who was second in command at NICAP, who had been a classmate of Hillenkoetter, and it seemed all quite genuine in his pleas for disclosure. Wouldn't he have had access as first director of CIA, as whatever?
That's the thing, is I think a lot of people had access. It's just,
But
why
then
was
again, he
everything
said
being
he
hidden?
thought the Air Force had the secret files. Right?
Sure. Let's go with
And
that.
then when I said this, I can remember
Yeah.
at the table with Phil Class, there was a young guy, and he held up his hand, and he says, you know what I think happened? And this was before the book came out, the day after Roswell. He said, I think Phil Corso kept all that material and held it from the intelligence community so they wouldn't have had it to give to Hillenkoetter or MJ12 or whatever.
Hmm.
And I'm like, uh-huh. And when I finally read the book and it come out, in it, doesn't he say, well, I certainly wasn't going to give anything to the CIA, he says, because they just hand it to the Soviets.
Oh, burn. That's,
Burn.
that's
Well, that's
yeah.
right. Yeah. So
That is a theory that
So
has
who
floated around
knows?
up there.
So anyway, it seems to me like the whole security system in the U.S., I mean, you're never sure you'll get an answer when you get an answer. And when
Hmm.
people ask me, I go, oh, God, down there it's worse than my country. It's a dog's breakfast, trying to get through. Who would
But
really
yet we
know or have
disclosed
access?
first, didn't we? Canada disclosed first. I mean, along with Russia, there's all kinds of them that disclosed
Well,
about
there's
3
all
years ago.
kinds that are, at least what I call small D disclosure.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Nobody stood up and said, and canceled, cleared their desk for the day, and no president or prime minister has said, yeah, okay, we know they're here, and it's never been. There's been lots of small D disclosure, yes, but
Yeah.
that capital D. And listen, if that were the case and you were going to do that, like, remember my question, the Hillenkotter thing really bothers me. He would know. But let's say some presidents know and some presidents did not know.
Right.
Right?
Which is a theory.
Yeah, I've had people there that worked in the intelligence community that said, well, we told Ronnie Reagan, but we didn't tell Trump. We told, I'm like, I don't know how you made cut or what the deciding thing
I think
is,
it's Democrats and Republicans. I think it's pretty much falls into to all the Republicans, but the Democrats, meh.
Well, we'll see what side it falls on if the aliens are admitted to, if they are indeed here, if they get the vote. If they, if they come under the umbrella of the Constitution, if they get suffrage in the vote, well, we'll know then.
We'll know.
What side it falls on, yeah. But, I've even had somebody tell me there that they were pressed up against the door the day that Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, boy, that seems like a long time ago,
It does.
was late showing up in the Oval Office to meet with Reagan, and they kept everybody waiting outside for an hour. And one of the reporters told me, and he was right outside the door listening to the crack, and it took about 20 minutes, but Reagan told Brian Mulroney about the aliens, and it took him about 20 minutes to convince him he wasn't joking around. And this man swears to it. Well, you could say, Chris, that's just another story, and you could dismiss it. That's typically what I would do, by the way. But here's just one thing to consider. This guy had leaked some things to me before that have stood up, and I'll give you an example. Remember I talked about that trip. I made a couple dozen trips to the U.S. over the years, to present at MUFON conferences or whatever. The one I mentioned about in Greensboro, North Carolina, the one where I had this amazing supper, whatever you want to call it, with Bill Klass and others. When I went down that time, just before then, this would have been the July 4th weekend, and I can't remember the date it was released, but before I came down, I was told by somebody by this media person, that there was going to be a big announcement from NASA that they might have discovered extraterrestrial life. And he said, not necessarily intelligent life, might be simple life, but there's going to be a big announcements coming out. Well, I'm like, yeah, and he really stressed, no, it's going to be big. The president's going to be involved in all this. And I thought, yeah, okay. And this guy had given me tips over the year, and but I kind of thought, yeah, okay, well, this ain't that. It'll be something maybe, okay, Michelle? But here's what happened. So on the way down, I remember I met some people that I ended up doing a few things with in the field. The first one I can remember I bumped into was the journalist Antonio Eunaeus. And I think I had a connection in Newark, and we recognized each other. And it was my first trip to the U.S., in fact, that one, and first of many. And, we flew together and sat in the seat on an almost empty 737. And after we we're talking about this, what was up, talk shop in the field, I said, listen, have you ever heard a rumor you get around that NASA is about to announce that they may have discovered extraterrestrial life? And he said, no, I haven't heard nothing. And yeah, so I let it go. I didn't push it. Well, when I was down at the MUFON conference, I got to, I already knew people before I came, from dealing with them, from the help they've given me, people that had sent files, everybody from Jan Aldrich to Rob Switek, people like that on the fund. And of course, at the time, Walt Andrus was still the director, right? So Walt and I'd helped him with a bunch of Canadian cases that had gone awry up here. So it was the first time we met face to face. And then he was like, so I asked Walt, I said, you ever heard? No, he said, haven't heard a rumor. John Schusler was there and others. I asked, nobody heard a rumor. And I said, well, okay. And I said, but this guy said everything he says seems to hold up, I can't remember how many days it was later. That's a matter of history. You could look it up. But I can remember watching TV. I was somewhere else doing a presentation. The next thing you know, they have a press conference with Bill Clinton, right? This was the press conference he had to announce the findings and about the Allen Hills meteorite. And that was all. And the clips from that, remember, had been incorporated into the fictional story in the movie Contact, right? But
Right.
the actual broadcast, he comes on, and says, it's preliminary, but we do believe they found microfossils of life, indication of a second genesis on Mars in fossils that have, and I thought, wow, buddy, come through for me again. And, several people call me up and say, who leaked this to you? How did you hear that, right? Anyway, remember the story I told you previous? This guy told me that he had his ear up against the crack of the door outside, with all the reporters, whose legs were going to sleep, waiting, being constantly delayed to meet, that first meeting of, actually it was the second meeting of Mulroney and Ronnie Reagan. And the next thing you know, he claims that he heard Ronnie Reagan tell him that, yes, there are aliens, we know, and blah, blah, blah. So, to this day, it makes you wonder why they would tell Ronnie Reagan, but they didn't tell Obama, they didn't tell Trump. I don't know how.
That's one of the big questions. But maybe it's how the question is also posed. So people look to the stars. Is it possible that life is already here? Is it interdimensional? Is it in our oceans, in our mountains? And
absolutely, it might not be ET. See, there's one of the things about my work. Everybody says they have an open mind, but for a lot of people, it's what I call alienology.
Okay.
They're out to find proof of ET. Listen, I am absolutely open to the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Right.
And I think in a lot of cases, Shag Harbour being one of them, that's what I'm seeing the indication of behind it. But I think that there are multiple reasons for the unknown class of sightings and encounters. And I think not just that, but I think there's multiple unconventional reasons for them too. And yes, some could be ET, some could be interdimensional or a super intelligence, and some sightings, some recent ones, including that one I had in 2018 where there's video and a bunch of people saw it on Cape Sable, to my mind, looks as if it could be an unrecognized life form on Earth that isn't normally visible. That's part of what I call a shadow biosphere, just among our own, right? And that's something that's being examined and considered quite a bit. There are several pages about it even in Wikipedia. In biology is going through a revolution where they're looking at things like, was there an earlier RNA world? Was it superseded by DNA or by panspermia or both? And, they're even considering that there's unrecognized life forms among us, like even odd things like desert varnish could be a life form. So, there's those possibilities, and you've got to look at it. And I think you can tell by the appearance, the behavior. There are other clues, but I think there's multiple things going on here, which to me, of course, it's a bigger challenge, but it makes it much more interesting. But to me, the extraterrestrial hypothesis is, of course, still on the table. There could be ET, and yes, he could be here. Yeah.
Yeah, because what do you say to abductees? It's kind of hard to say to them that, no, your experience isn't real, or it's a perception of something that's happened.
No, and I have only investigated one such case in depth. There have been a number of claimants here on the East Coast and in Nova Scotia, right? There's only one case that compelled me enough that I went to in depth, and this is really funny. It kind of drugged me in. I had no interest in it, and that may sound a bit odd, but people who know me realize for years this guy was caught up in the nuts and bolts and the paper chase and the meetings in parking lots. And,
I like it.
Like the deep throat.
You're like the cigarette smoking man on X-Files. Just going to meet and then get some information in private.
Hopefully just a little healthier, but maybe
Oh, yeah, hopefully.
I enjoy that. I enjoy the chase, getting out of the armchair but do you want to hear about that?
I do.
I
want to hear everything.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, Michelle, because some people will be surprised about this. People down in the community down there know about it now and that. But the weirdest thing is how this come about, because like I say, my first little American book that came out way back in 2001 about Shag Harbour, that first little effort, God, believe it or not, in the beginning of the manuscript, that thing was 3 times as thick, but, they were so afraid, at Del Bantam, a U.S. publisher, that somebody might sue, and I said, nobody sues in Canada. Nobody's going to, But everybody, they gave it to 3 different editors, and they all got their checks, so they all had to make a cut in that. And boy, that got thin. But here's the thing. Back in that time, I think it was actually before the book came out, Don and I had written to Don Ledger, who's still a UFO investigator here on the coast. Don and I still see one another now and then when he's in town. And I think he's still the technical affiliate for NARCAP that investigates pilot sightings and that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as early as 1999 and a few years before that, Don got interested in the abduction phenomena beyond what we were doing with cases like Shag Harbour and landing cases and NARCAP, his pilot sightings that he was just obsessed about and did such a great job on. Well, he was looking into a few of these cases, and several times he would ask me, like, are you interested in this? Would you like to come down? And I was always, no, man, count me out. I said, listen, if what I'm saying did happen, those things are certainly possible, but I'm so busy between what I'm doing here and still doing a 9 to 5, being a musician and all these side gigs and UFOs, I don't have time. I said, it's not my thing, Don. And I said, look, I don't know what you do with it even when you find pay dirt on that. In the end, it's a person's personal thing. I feel for them. It's just not for me. And he say, okay. And he tried a number of times to interest me, and I always passed on it, Michelle, right? Well, one day he came to me and he said, listen, I got one case that I'm really perplexed about and really impressed with. And he says, I'd love you to come down once just for an interview and meet this girl and get your impression, because I would value it. He said, it's important. And I thought, well, I couldn't refuse him. This guy had been a great colleague. We worked on so much. It was so hard to get that first little book out about a Canadian case, I said, well, of course. So we went back down. And at the time, this experiencer was living on, you've heard this before, Cape Sable Island, about 5 miles from Shag Harbour, of course, right? And she was married, had a good marriage and some young children. We went to the home. And I had a rough idea. Donna told me what to expect. Well, that night, we went down a weekday night. I think we arrived, it was late-ish. It's about a 3-hour drive from Metro, and we weren't well planned, and we were all night owls at the time, so I think we arrived, it was like 8:30 at night, and it was very foggy, I can remember. And I think it was like late spring. It was cold out, but not freezing. So anyway, we went to the home and had a great evening there, and she went through the stories. A lot of her experience was typically what you'd get in most abduction scenarios. There were a few quips. Technically speaking, she would be what one would call a repeater, but it was like once in 10 years, right? It was a handful of experiences, and they were quite dramatic. So anyway, it was real interesting. She claimed to have an artifact in her near the tailbone, and showed me pictures of it and actually allowed me to observe it, and it was sizable. You could see it through
Like
the
a
skin
chip,
there.
basically.
Oh, this thing had some bulk to it.
Oh.
And was in there, and I was like, to me it looked like it would be painful to endure it, its presence. I was like, whoa, that's not what so anyway, we had this great thing, and Dawn had me there. It wasn't so much, and I'm not going to go through all the facts of the case here.
Sure,
There's
of
other
course.
things we're going to touch on, but it was more to give my opinion of her as a witness, because I'd worked in the mental health field and a few other things, and it was all good and it was interesting. We left the home, I think, Michelle, it was about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning or something,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were trying to get us to linger. You get that kind of maritime hospitality. They're trying to force feed you and give you stuff.
Which is
Well,
awesome.
we had to go out. Yeah. When we left the home on the island, it's probably about 15, 20 minutes before you get on the main 100 series highway, the 103, to head back to the city. And when we leave our home instantly, there's a real heavy rain coming down. It's like Amazonian in proportions, just driving. And there's a steady wind out of the east. So we're going west-east, so we're going to be driving into this, and it's just pounding at my old K5 Blazer. And Dawn hated that. I was driving, and it was in rough shape. It was an old thing, but always got you there. So we pull out, and the water's just drumming on us, and it just kept up. and I never turned the radio on, which was my habit. He sat there, and even though we've been there, we were kind of talked up. We never started talking, and I figured that's good, Dawn. This is going to be a long drive. Let's just head back. We'll talk about this later. So we start heading back, and when I get onto the main highway, this rain just doesn't let up, and the angle it's coming at, the vehicle wants to hydroplane. You know what I mean? So I'm not going to be able to make real time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, this is going to be miserable. And I'm starting to think, maybe we'll stop in Shelburne on the way back. There's a 24-hour Tim Hortons right by the exit ramp there, because this is going to be a long night. We're just a few miles coming into Highway 103. Hardly made any progress. And I'm starting to notice this faint glow around the vehicle with a greenish tinge to it. And when I talk about a glow, picture this. It's not like a light shining down from above, but it was like a torus of light, like a giant hoop or donut around us.
Right.
But it was very, very pale at first, Michelle. You could barely see it. And, none of us had still talked, and it's just getting to the point where, okay, I'm sure I'm seeing it. It's not just a trick of light.
Had
or
a few
the
moments
heavy
of those
rain
myself. Yeah, it's like that.
reflecting back the lights, but there's something, because it's going right around the vehicle. So I'm the first one to speak, and I say to Dawn Ledger, I go, Dawn, I said, tell me you're seeing this.
I'm going to be that guy. Did you just see this?
And his response, I'll never forget, was he goes, yeah, but I wasn't going to say anything. Dawn was so tired, I could tell. And just as soon as he makes that comment, the light gets much brighter, like you turned up a dimmer switch. And you're starting to get this white flashing, just you couldn't tell where it was coming from, and it was like when somebody's arc welding and you're too close and it's just blinding you. So I start slowing up because it's actually difficult to drive. All the time this is happening in the middle of the night, we're not passing a vehicle either way. We're alone, right? And that section of highway from Barrington to the next town of Shelburne, there's nothing but alder brush and softwood. There's nothing and nobody, right? And that's where we are. So Dawn says to me, next, God, I remember this like it's yesterday, and this is in the book, I think, all of it. He says, like, whatever you do, don't stop this thing, And he no sooner says that, and this sounds like it's scripted for a bad TV show, I can feel that there's ice forming in the carburetor. This old Chevy, the stove had rusted off that went from the exhaust manifold up to the carburetor. And when you drove in conditions like this, and it was just above freezing, in the rain, it would freeze. Now, it was an easy fix. Once this happened, you just have to pull over and shut it off. The heat comes up through the block. You're good for the rest of the night. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so he tells me that, and I go, well, Dawn, you're not going to like this. I go, but we're going to have to pull over and stop because I got ice in the carburetor.
with the light, yeah.
As I'm putting my foot down, I said, it's actually making it slow down. I said, if I don't stop, we'll be doing 5 miles an hour in about 10 minutes. I got to stop. Oh, he was mad at me. He was like, why did we take this? We should have taken my car. But I said, it'll be fine. The battery's good. We'll start right up. I said, and besides, when we shut the vehicle down and put off the lights, we'll see if the light stays. Well, he wasn't impressed. He didn't like that at all. So we pull over by Highway 3, and we shut it off. And, geez, the light is still there, right? So, and the rain is just not letting up. So I start putting my jacket on, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going out to have a look. And I can't repeat what he said next. He was upset. He said, take your keys out, put your keys there. And I said, well, don't you try to start this till it sits for 5 minutes. We'll be fine then. So anyway, I go out. I'm instantly soaked to the skin, and I walk up. And I really couldn't imagine what happened next. It was really bizarre. But as I walked toward the ring of light in this pouring rain, and it was so hard just to look and to keep your eyes open because the water's stinging and that, you couldn't reach it. It's like walking to the end of the rainbow. It would move away from me. And yet when I look behind the vehicle, the back part of the ring doesn't catch up with my rear bumper. So I'm trying to picture what's happening. Like, did it get bigger as I tried to approach it? Or, you know what I mean? It just made no sense, right? Just a few seconds pass. I'm soaked to the skin. I just get back to the vehicle. And Dawn's sitting there, and I go, geez, Dawn. I said, did you see what happened when I walked toward it? He goes, I didn't look.
So you just want to miss it completely, like it didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. So we wait a couple minutes, start the vehicle, starts fine. We're fine the rest of the way, and he said, "You're taking exit 26 in the shower." And I said, "No argument, man. I'll go for that Tim Hortons coffee. But right now, I'll have 2 cups tonight." And we drove, and this light stayed with us all the way to the exit. This would be like another 20 miles. And again, never passed a vehicle. And here's the corker. We take exit 26, and just as I take the exit, it's like somebody turned the dimmer switch, and the light just fades, and it's gone. But it
So
stayed with us right to the exit to the
what's
coffee shop.
your take on the light?
Well, I'll tell you mine, because the first thing we did when we get in is I asked Don, "What's his take on it?" I said, "What the hell do you think that? What?" I said,
Nobody wants
"Don,
to be that guy. What's your take? I'll
what do
tell
you
you my
think that
take.
is?" And his response to me was shocking. Remember, this is the guy that struck me down.
Right.
I can't say against my will, out of character, and I was glad I went, and I'll get to that, to meet this woman, to be, privy to this case. And the first time I went, into, I guess you'd call it an abduction investigation, if that's it. My role was just as an observer and give an opinion later, but I was there. And, so I asked Don, I said, "Well, what do you think that was?" And he said, "I don't know, but I don't think it was a UFO thing."
You don't think
Well, I
it was
said,
a UFO?
I don't know what it was, Don. I said, "But don't you think?" I said, "Do you know how many times I've come down here?" He'd gone down quite a bit, but me many times more. I've been going down there for years. I said, "What's the chances that we go there and you tell me that and you bring me down the first time, and now this happens? I've never had anything. I never had a sighting there." Well, now I have had since, and that was on Cape Sable too, as you know. But so we talked about that for some time, had several coffees, went back to the city without incident, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never went down with him to her place again, or to any other case like this, right? And Don and I, over the years, were working on different things and would see one another occasionally, but not that often. 20 years later, 20 years, just a couple weeks before the 50th anniversary of the Shag Harbour Incident, I get a call from Heather Doucette, which is the name of this person. She's come out about her involvement since. She hadn't at that point, right? She calls and says, "This is Heather Doucette." She says, "I used to be," and she uses her previous name. And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "I don't know if you remember me." And I said, "Well, I'd have trouble forgetting. And we went and met, and she told me she didn't get involved with the local UFO group down there, and she knew there was a conference coming up. And she said, "I'm thinking of coming out and telling my story there." And the night before, do we need a break or anything?
No.
Okay, good.
No.
The
Yeah.
night before she was to present about this at this conference that came up a few weeks later, I came in on the second day, and one of the organizers came up to me and said, "You're not going to believe this, but Heather canceled." And I said, "Oh, that's unfortunate." And there'd been a personal conflict with somebody else there, and somebody was saying, "We know what you're going to say, and no one's going to believe you, and your family doesn't support it," and all this. And this organizer said, "Well, Chris, do you think you can call her or help us?" And I said, "Yes." And I called up, said, "Heather, look, I'm not going to bend your arm, but if you want to drop out because you think someone's going to be critical or whatever," I said, "it's a terrible reason." I said, "Because I warned you that, if you do this, I mean, you can stop, but, you're always going to be that girl. You know what I mean? It's that, right? You can't put the cork back in the bottle." But to my surprise, I forget how it came up. I said, "Don't worry about them." The next thing I realized, and it had come out by accident, I realized she never knew what happened, that Don went down several times afterwards. He never told her about the incident, about when we left her place. And I was stymied by this. So I told her that, and she was like, "Oh my God." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. If you want to go up and tell your story, if you figure it is that time to come out," I said, "I'm going to go up first and introduce you, and I'm going to tell my story of what happened when I left your place 20 years ago."
And did that do it?
You could hear a pin drop. Yes, that did it. And both of them were the first time they've been told on the stage. And yeah. So then that began me being involved in looking into the case, and that's a whole other story. But there's how reluctant I was to look into it. And But her case, I'm hoping, is going to be part of a future book, and it's kind of unlike and unique, and to this day it's impressed me. I have trouble saying ultimately how to interpret her story, but something sure happened there, just like something sure happened in Shag Harbour. By the way, since then, she moved back to Shag Harbour, so
Of all places.
of all places, on Bear Point Road at that, where another famous case happened. Oh,
I
it's
talked
just
about
like
that.
that down there, UFO country.
Okay. So what I'm going to do, if we can jump to that, is I'm going to do a really quick station ID. So I
Whatever
just
you
don't.
need.
Okay, perfect. So, anyone tuning in, you are listening to The Outer Realm with myself, Michelle Desrochers, minus my little bubbly companion, Amelia Pisano, this evening. We are the United Public Radio. We are broadcasting on UFO Paranormal Radio Network, UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, on 105.3 FM in the beautiful city of New Orleans. We are fully sponsored by the amazing people over at Folgers Coffee. So, again, thank you, Folgers. Tonight we're talking UFOs, Canadian stories with Mr. Chris Stiles. So, thank you again for joining us. Chris, stage is yours.
Okay.
No
Uh,
pressure.
I don't feel any pressure,
Good.
just just from my computer microphone here.
Psycho
My
figures.
glitchy software was what it was in the end.
Oh,
Of course, it
nobody wants
didn't
you to tell your
didn't get
story.
go. Yeah. All right.
Mm.
So, yeah, that I mean, think about this just in terms of Heather's story. That takes us up to what year was that? 2017. For 20 years, I didn't go down, didn't discuss it with Dawn, didn't go to any other cases.
Hmm.
And she called me out of the blue, and we kind of shook each other up with. I was surprised she didn't know what happened, and anyway, you get the drift of that. That's interesting, right? She did her presentation.
Hmm.
I started kind of picking up the torch again, and with her, with 20 years later, she was better able to deal with the case, and I had arranged a regression session and other things, and the things that could be done.
Hmm.
Not my specialty, of course, but I had access to many of the people who did and got advice from, you know, those who know better than me about these things, right?
Hmm.
But let's jump to the next coincidence from 2017 to the next year, 2018. Well, because of this, her and I have, of course, stayed in contact since because of all these things that happened, right? But here's how things connect down there and how paranormal things are on the southwestern coast of Nova Scotia for some of us.
Hmm.
Um, in 2018, um, a friend of mine who's a I call him a film thingy guy. He's a bit of a documentary buff. That's done some short pieces that had them in a few film festivals. Was going down to film somebody uh, about a sea monster sighting, nothing to do with UFOs. And
Hmm.
he said, it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. I heard you might be meeting Heather and going down to Shag Harbour. I said, well, I'll be going to Shag Harbour, but I ain't staying there. So I'm going to pick her up. We're going into Yarmouth, which is, say 30, 40 minutes drive away, a town. And I said, we're going there. She wants to introduce me. Now, remember, this all started with Don Ledger wanting me to observe somebody and hear their story about an abduction scenario. She wanted to take me to somebody she knew who at the time was a physics teacher in a high school to tell me something similar.
Hmm.
And again, I was a bit reluctant, but I agreed to go in and meet this person at their home. And it was her that was dragging me along this time. And we met. This time it's not a rainy night or dark or anything. It's the middle of the afternoon. And we go there and had a beautiful day in a little village called Arcadia outside the town of
I know
Yarmouth,
it.
right? Do
Yeah.
you know Arcadia?
I'm really familiar with Nova Scotia. Yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful place. We were in
It
the
is.
backyard and, drinking lemonade and cucumber
Hmm.
sandwiches and just enjoying the most beautiful day like we so rarely get here.
Hmm.
Not a cloud in the sky, dry air, hot. It was
Hmm.
September 15th, 2018. I will never forget this date. So we've been there, and it was getting around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right? And we'd had several calls earlier with my friend who was in Cape Sable. doing the thing. And he said, well, if you get done quick enough, give me a call. Maybe we'll link up for supper by the highway or. But hearing the great stories I'd heard and having such a great day in Arcadia, I, I'd failed to do that. But I think it was like 3 minutes after 3 or something. I'd have to look at my notes. I get a phone call from Justin Brown, this friend who's, on Cape Sable Island, right? And he calls and he's extremely panicky. And he says, where are you at? Are you in Shag Harbour yet? I said, no, I'm still near Yarmouth. And he says, well, there's a UFO over the island right now in the daylight. Everybody's looking at it. Like, you got to get here. Well, I said, well, you tell it to hang around. I'll make my way. I think Heather and I were about to leave. And he was real panicky. And I think he thought I was just being kind of frivolous or light about it when I think about my choice of words. But I was serious. I said, no, I'm coming. Like, well, hurry up. You got to get here. I've been videoing this for 10 minutes and blah, blah, blah. So, okay, I'm on the way. Well, even before we leave, and we later regret for not inviting this woman along with us that we'd gone to interview. That's another story for another day. We stayed out. We started booting it down the highway as best we can toward Shag Harbour. Heather makes the suggestion of taking an earlier exit than I would normally take. And that turned out to be a mistake. We take this exit, and these perfect sunny conditions by the time we get to Pubnico, you probably have some idea where that's since you know Nova Scotia, we're in an extreme fog bank and road work. So our progress has suddenly gone to zero, but we're still trying to make our way. On the way there, Laurie Wickens called. Now, I'll tell you who Laurie Wickens is. Besides being a member of the Shag Harbour Incident Society, he was the first witness back on October the 4th, 1967 to call the RCMP. And he says, Chris, in his coarse fisherman's voice, he hollers, yeah? He goes, where you at? He goes, I'm on Cape Sable Island and there's a UFO over it. You got to get here. So, Dick, I'm on the way to Cape Sable, hang in there. And the next thing you know, other people start phoning me that say, you're not by any chance in Shag Harbour because they know how often I go down. I said, you're on Cape Sable, right? I'm on the way. You see a UFO? Yes, we do. So I thought, well, we'll make our best time. It should have taken us 30, 40 minutes to get there. It ended up taking an hour. And I figured, well, we're not going to much see anything. Before we actually get to the island, I'm on the causeway going over to the island. We get another call from Justin Brown and a couple of the other witnesses saying, it's no longer over Clark's Harbour or Centerville. We're on south side of the island by Daniels Head Beach. Do you know where it is? I said, I know exactly where it is. I know the area well. So we head right there. And the minute we pull into the little beach parking lot, and this area, are you familiar with Lawrencetown, Nova Scotia?
I'm not.
Where everybody surfs at here, out back at there? Okay.
No.
Anyway, picture a beach that, if you looked out to sea, if you didn't look behind you, you could think you're on Sable Island. You know what I mean? Long Miram, grass, dunes, lots of sand.
Yeah,
trees,
very
right?
nice.
That kind
Yeah.
of very nice, lovely spot.
Mhm.
And we can't just quite see the horizon of the ocean from the parking lot because the dunes kind of rise, and once you go over that first dune, you're right on this beautiful crescent beach, right? So before we reach that, I'm sitting in the car with Heather just shutting it down. I look up, and here's Laurie Wickens and Justin Brown and others coming over the hill. And I said, oh, God, Heather, do you want me to translate the look on their face? I said, it's the one that got away. This is like do you know how many UFOs I've chased over the years? And you get there and hear about what took you so long, the one that got away. And literally as I'm swinging my driver's door open on the Kia, I hear Justin holler, man, what took you so long? Like, what are you doing? Like, oh, you should have been here, My batteries are dead now. Come with me to my Jeep. I'm going to plug this in. You got to see what I caught on my Canon camera, So we're trying to do that. Heather just walks toward the dunes, the pier over them and that. We're only there about a minute, and he's trying to hook up his camera to show me. And suddenly she hollers at us, it's back. So we all rush over the dune to the beach. And when I first get over, Michelle, I'm not that impressed. In the distance, when I look out to open sea, to the Atlantic Ocean, I see this bright, bright dot. And conditions are still good here, unlike that fog bank we went through on Cape Sable. again, you get this Windex blue sky, no clouds. There's a little quarter moon right down by the horizon, and it's bright and sunny and just the most gorgeous day. There's a light west wind at our back, and I'm looking out to sea, and I just see this bright dot. It looked kind of like Venus or Jupiter. There's nothing else in the sky but that horizon touching quarter moon, and not a puff or wisp, no haze or anything. And I'm like, okay, well, there's something there, and it's really bright. And after you stare at it for some seconds, you realize it's coming in our direction, but it's a few miles offshore. Well, as the time goes by, and and people are running up to me and telling me, well, when you see it, you'll see it's clear. It's like an orb, but there's a cube inside, and it's powder blue, or it looks like a peace symbol, but it's powder blue. Or people say there's some kind of beams inside, but they're powder blue, and So as it's getting closer and it gets large enough that it's no longer a dot, and you can just kind of see there's some kind of structure to it, suddenly it disappears like it's not there. It's like, and I couldn't tell, Michelle, if this is what's often described in these cases as instant acceleration,
Right.
or if it had just simply disappeared like to another dimension, just gone. Well, Justin says, well, you got to stick around. It might come back. He goes, it disappeared a few times before. And the group of us there, we get in a circle with all our backs to each other, looking in all directions in case it appeared elsewhere. But when it did reappear, about a minute and a half later, it was still offshore and coming toward us. But this time it's closer. And it's slowly descending in altitude, but it's still a few thousand feet up, I would say, right? Well, as it's getting closer, you can see the features in it, and you can tell it's three-dimensional. It's not like a projection or anything. By the way, we were all so transfixed looking at it, we didn't notice we're right down by the water's edge at this point, and a little rogue wave comes in, and we all get wet feet. We realize we're just entranced looking at it, and you back up, and everybody had a laugh, right? And I can remember it was the last warm day of the summer, really, that day, that year in Nova Scotia. And there were a lot of people there just getting sun or in the water. I remember a couple of young girls were leaving. They were just holding their bags and clothes and bathing suits about to leave. And they come up and they go, what are you guys looking at? And it started moving closer again. When we pointed up and they seen it, they just ran for their car. And I started noticing the reactions of the people. Some people would just grin and stare. Some were euphoric. Some were fearful. Others would just shrug and go, I don't know what that is, and leave. It was just the full gambit. And I was actually finding that just as interesting as, the data is the UFO itself, Anyway, when it really starts to get closer, I can remember Heather Dissette saying to me, if this thing gets any closer, we're going to have all the answers and see it. Well, I was almost a little fearful when she said that for a minute, because in that very spot, months before, somebody told me where they were paralyzed by one of these that showed up suddenly, and I'd never told anyone the story.
Oh, wow.
Well, the next thing you know, it disappears again. And this time, Justin Brown said, you want me to run up to the car and get your binoculars? And I had this great pair of Steiner binoculars, and at the risk of sounding like a commercial, I mention that because these are the ones that have that autofocus feature. And it's so handy in the UFO business, because when you look at something in the distance, if it's something soft or not detailed or it's foggy out, you're in focus, because everything from 60 feet to infinity, when these are preset, are for your eyes. So he just handed them to me, and I'm at the ready. And we look up, and on this third reappearance, it did something really weird. When it reappeared, at first it just looked like a black dot, and the black dot grew like a black disc, and it looked like a reverse image of the eclipse of the sun.
Wow.
And instead of seeing the corona that sticks out beyond the moon when it doesn't quite hide it, and flares out, the part that was flaring out was black, and it was almost like it was pushing the sky away.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden, just boop, it went back to its original appearance as a clear sphere with the blue beams inside, right? So I had the binoculars now. I put them right on and could see inside, and I could see lots of detail. And it was a cube inside a sphere, but you were only seeing like part of the cube. And there was some little spheres down in the corner, and you could see these kind of features. This closest sighting lasted only 30 seconds, and it was gone. And that was it.
That's crazy. I mean, it really hung around for quite some time, didn't it?
The whole thing was an hour and 20 minutes. Now, I got there for the last 7 minutes, but they were the best 7 minutes. And the reason I say that, It's not just because I was there, but I was there. The reason, what I mean by that is this: is
Mhm.
there's a lot of footage from earlier that people like Justin Brown took. He took a 10-minute sequence there before his batteries went dead, and they only went dead because he'd been filming the sea monster story earlier from a
Mhm.
witness. Um, but when that happened, um, in the earlier footage, it was just passing over the island at the zenith, and it didn't do any special maneuvers or disappear. You can see it clearly, but there was nothing dramatic, nothing that would, further the interpretation as something unconventional. But when we seen it disappear and reappear twice, and uh, that was very telling. You know what I mean? That was very exciting, right?
Mhm.
When it was finally gone and we were all talking about it afterwards, it was interesting because people seemed that were standing there that had watched it seemed to need a few moments to recover. Some of them were euphoric, some were giddy. They almost seemed like oxygen drunk. It seemed to have that kind of effect on people, right?
Mhm.
What a day. You know what I mean? The last time I'd seen something where I could say, Michelle, that was a UFO. I was 12 years old. And but think about it again. Who happens to be with me again? Heather Doucette. Lori Weckens, the original witness. And that's one of the first things we said, no one's going to believe this. They're going to think this is scripted. Why would this happen when we're all here, you know?
Well,
But,
maybe because you've seen UFOs. Maybe there's a theory that I've been told that if you see them, chances are it's because you've been in contact with them at some point, or maybe abducted, because they allegedly scrub the memory, loop it. You don't know, but it's not everyone's meant to see it.
I think some people can't see them,
Yeah, I agree.
even when pointed out. And I've seen that, right? And, when you think about it,
Mm.
I'm still learning things. I think the last time on your show we spoke of that Lower Sackville case that was so strange where the neighbors
Yeah,
disappeared. You know something since I think you had Elliot on as a guest, didn't you? The
yeah, a couple of
OCMP.
times. Yeah, he's
You had,
awesome.
yeah, okay, yeah. I got an email from him the other day, and he sent me a document somebody had put on Paul Kimball's, I think, website or blog site. Paul, by the way, was Stanton Friedman's nephew,
Oh, very
still
nice.
alive. He's a filmmaker and still dabbles in matters UFO and other paranormal things. And when I
Right.
went on the site, somebody had written into it, and they were another witness to that case back then. And I'm hoping to eventually link up with them. So, all
Wow.
these years later, you still learn new things. You look at Shag Harbour, where I found the lightkeeper's wife who left the province for years.
Hmm.
Elliot informed me about a follow witness, and there were details in it where I'm sure it's not somebody just trying to attach to their case or bring a little life into it, but there there were things that indicate they were a genuine witness, and I'm hoping to link up with them. So, that's the great thing about being in with the long haul, living in a small area like this where everybody knows somebody, you know,
Hmm.
and
And everybody seems to have their UFO hotspot.
yeah,
Like, no matter how
yeah.
small your community is, there seems to be. I've been to many places throughout the
Hmm.
country or US. There's these little hotspots, but especially near the water. Do you think maybe you guys have a base?
Well, that's been suggested. I don't know if there's a base. That's speculation, but I don't know if they would need a base. But I know one thing: they've certainly been seen coming out and entering the water here.
That's what I mean.
That,
Like
yeah,
Shag Harbor itself was.
yeah.
So I'm just getting some
Shag
air.
Harbour, Shelburne. I'll tell you how common it is. This is going to sound funny and a little dicey. I think it was back in '94 or so. I bought a really cheap car, um, $300, an old Volkswagen Rabbit. I was really sad
Wow.
for a car. Didn't have a lot of money at the time,
Yeah.
and I bought this car, and it had a legit sticker on it, but it was in rough shape. But it get you from here to there. Got me to Shag Harbour a number of times in those early days.
Right.
Well, anyway, I bought this. Believe it or not, this was a trade-in at a dealer. But one day I had a knock at the door at my apartment at the time. I didn't have a house there, and well, it was something. This guy come to the door, and he was some kind of inspector with the Department of Motor Vehicles in Nova Scotia, and you know what departments like that are like here in Canada. These things are.
Oh
They can tell
yes.
you how much to charge for potatoes here. You know what I mean? It's like
Oh
government's
yes.
into everything. It's not like the U.S. So he
Mm-hmm.
comes to the door. So right away I'm thinking, oh my God, G-man, at the door, right? So what's he want? And he rattles off something from a piece of paper. There was an investigation. They think there's a problem with the car I bought legally. And I said, yeah. And he wanted to know, and if I willingly give information, they weren't interested in prosecuting me or anything, whether I was involved or not, but they wanted information on this dealership, right? And, I go, I get a complete walk, even if it's my grandson who did it, or, yes, yeah, okay. So I said, well, I have nothing but coming. And I answered his questions, and that was fine, right? Well, I had only been on a couple of local television shows and in that, and toward the end, the guy recognized, he says, you're the guy that, yeah, I said, that's right. And he says, I don't know if you ever heard any stories from the Bay of Fundy area down Digby. And, he's come in for this reason. He sits down for hours and starts telling me about them sitting on the shoreline one night because they were watching UFOs coming in and out of the water. And he's with me trying to get a prosecution for this. But he bothered to tell me that story. But it just shows you how common that is. And I can remember laughing and thought, who'd ever think this? Well, he says, I hope you don't use my name, he says, because this is my job and I'm not supposed to be, but that's how commonplace it can be here, Another great example I love, and I often tell this one when I'm doing lectures, there was a period I was doing a clipboard survey down those areas, trying to get a grasp on what was going on, with the phenomenon in the early days. And this is when I had time in my hands and I was an eager beaver. And I remember doing this, and when I got to Cape Sable Island, I had some really strange ones. You'd knock at the door, and somebody answered the door and explained who I was and what I was hoping to do. And some woman would stand there listening, with her arms folded, and she'd go, oh, I get sick of hearing about that. I don't know anything about UFOs. All I know is when them orange balls are down on the beach, Mom used to tell us, and I tell my kids not to go near them.
Right.
They were just a fact of life there. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
it was so incorporated that, and the downside of that, Michelle, is often if there's something and it's at altitude and it doesn't look super dramatic, like the mothership's going to land, if it's just some orb activity, most people don't look at it, or they do, they go, those things, and they just, life goes on. You got to pay the bills, they got to go get the traps in time. You got to go home, make a sandwich. Life goes
Maybe. Maybe.
on. Yeah.
I don't know. I like it. I mean, you guys are in a pretty remote area. Like I wonder if you get, mind you, again, I hear that the UFOs really, there are a lot of sightings in metropolis areas also. But I would think, I grew up north, so it
Mm-hmm.
was more remote, and we did have more sightings up
Well,
there.
you got to remember up there, unlike downtown Toronto, a lot of the year, you can see the sky.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's
It's like
true.
in Nova Scotia. If you look at all these old reports, I've got some right here beside me, in fact, old
Hmm.
RCMP reports. If you look at the dates on them, half the time they're September, October. Why is that? Well, that's one of the times of year you tend to have clear skies here.
That's
I mean,
true.
a lot of the year we're in a fog bank here, right?
No, that's true.
Yeah,
I mean, growing up north again, it is crystal blue skies. You're
yes,
definitely going to
that's right.
see things a little bit differently than, the big city where everything is a glow.
Yeah, you don't see much.
Here, very fortunate, very,
Well,
very clear.
when that last comet that was near, that was visible at night, right? I could
Mm.
never see it here in the city, and the first time I saw it before it was out of range, moving away from the sun again, was on a trip to Shag Harbour, and I wasn't sure if it was still around. People talked about it for a couple of weeks, and it slipped out of the water
Mm.
cooler talk type thing, and I hadn't seen it, and I figured it was too far gone. Geez, I drove down to Shag Harbour, and of course you could see it without even trying. You
Right.
realize how much you can miss here in the city.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I believe so. I think too, people are too busy, doing this.
Oh yes,
And I
yes,
think they're missing, what's going on up there. I always say disclosure. I kind of have a little bit of a caha to that because it's a matter of I think you get more from everyday people who are catching, much like your experience. You guys are videotaping this amazing experience. People are
yeah,
doing this all over the world. A friend of mine just sent me an amazing UFO photo that he took a few days ago when he was in the south of France. He goes, "Oh, hey, I was up on this mountain, thought you'd like this." I'm like, broad daylight. I mean,
Mm.
that's something else. Like, I don't think I've ever seen one in broad daylight.
Well, that was the shocker for me on the Cape Sable sighting. We were, like I said, 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a bright sunny day in September. You know, you feel privileged. I'll tell you when you see it. Somebody said, do you ever think you'll have another sighting? Because I was 12 before I had one. That, you know, it'd been that long since I'm 66 now, right? And I thought it would never happen again. But in 2018, to catch that lengthy daylight sighting and so many witnesses standing around with you, and to get some video of it and everything, it's like
Pretty impressive.
that was a good day. That was a good day, Michelle. I mean, some people say, well, that was a great day when you got to visit this city, or I wouldn't mind south of France, or you were on a show, or you met somebody you always wanted to meet because of your work. But you know what?
Mm.
Nothing tops that. To be in down there and you're looking at that and you go, that is something that's the holy other.
It,
That's
it is. I can't believe it.
yeah.
It lasted. Like, it was a pretty long event.
Well, that's right, and that's the incredible thing. And as it played out, it was emotionally draining on the witnesses. As I tried to describe, and it was a full range of reactions. Although some had none, some of them were just like, "What's that?" I don't know
Hmm.
what that is, and they'd walk away. But for many of them, it started becoming emotionally draining. It was like they were oxygen drunk. They were hyperventilating, and sometimes it was euphoric, and sometimes, they were a little distraught. But it definitely had an effect. You need two things for a sighting or an encounter. You need a UFO. You need a witness, and it's that human element that is just as enticing. Like I say, the longer it played on, I didn't want to take my eyes away, but I found myself more and more watching the people too.
Yeah, yeah, because that's
Yeah.
that's an amazing experience. But to experience it with so many other people, and you're witnessing the same thing, that's pretty incredible. That's a pretty special moment.
Yeah, it was reassuring. It was like you
Hmm.
looked at it and you're like, because after a while, it can seem kind of academic to you, and it's like, yeah, but it's so hard and it's never going to happen. And I think about how many people want an interview about a UFO experience, and I would often ask them, well, do you think it'll ever happen again? And some would say, oh, I don't think I'll be that lucky. I keep looking, I keep thinking I'm seeing something, but in the end, it's not. And then
Hmm.
others would say, well, I don't know. And for some of them it was negative, and some of them were in the middle. And for those ones, I'd usually say, well, would you want your children to experience it? And they'd go, no. But
Hmm. That's a
wow, yeah,
tough
to
one.
me it charged my batteries. It was like, yeah, well,
It gives you a little bit
there is
more
some magic,
oomph
it
to
is in
keep going,
there.
doesn't it?
Oh yeah, well, you know, you're good now for years. Like
I don't know.
it's
They
possible.
say, and another theory is that if you just go outside and ask,
Yeah, I've been told that. Some people claim that.
yeah, yeah,
I encourage them to. I don't
I
see
have
why
I have a
not.
few. I've had some
You know.
guests come on and say, I just went
Yeah.
out and I just asked. I'm like, just like that. Well, shit, I've been doing it wrong the whole time.
Mm.
you
It
know.
hasn't worked for me in life for too many things I've asked. Like I'd like a '59 Les Paul or
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
a pre CBS Strat or something, but
Yeah,
hasn't appeared yet. I have to be happy with my old Telecaster. So.
right. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Seeing a UFO. It just goes to show if that's a fact, then there's intelligent life there.
Mm. But
There's
yeah,
something.
people say that, and early on when I was so serious and overwrought with this stuff, it used to bother me when people would say something like, "Well, I'll just wish for it and it happens," or "Do you think it could happen?"
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, "I don't have time for that." Nowadays, I'm just like, you kind of mellow out, and it's like, yeah, who knows? I'm just glad that I've met the people I've met, and you've had the experiences you've had,
Hmm.
and your mind was open to it, and you know it's better
Hmm.
than collecting stamps. Yes, there is life after high school. That's
There's
important
life
to me
after
who's
high
not an
school.
academic.
Yeah.
That's important for me, somebody who's not an academic or a scientist, right? I just
Right.
kind of threw myself at this thing and was persistent because nobody else seemed to be doing it here, you know.
Hmm.
And I was glad that I've seen a few of these cases gain their own momentum. And it was like, yes, I was right. There's something there. But there was nothing, you know, they say seeing is believing,
Hmm.
but seeing is more than believing. It was life affirming. It really was for me there that day. I'm like, yes, you're not wasting your time. You
But
know,
now
you
that you've
knew
had
it.
this like amazing sighting,
Mm.
do you think you'll find yourself helping people who claim to have been abducted a little bit more, like Heather, people in her situation?
Yeah, possibly,
Yeah,
possibly. You know, the trouble is, you know, everybody wants me to do something. I mean, uh,
that might be the key, though.
well, it might be, you know, because it's certainly in a lot of ways that's more gratifying than what is it? I think on the 21st, the French group up there in Quebec has asked me to respond to this Pentagon release, and I thought, and they give me a list of who's doing it. You know what sold me on that? I was almost ready to refuse that, and I think, oh God, another time-consuming thing, and I got to write a paper and make a video that'll go on YouTube. But
Right.
when I seen a bunch of people I respected, many I haven't met from around the world, it's truly a global event, and I'll tell you, credit really goes out to Jan Vadnais, the director there of the French UFO group, Garpan, for
Hmm.
getting this thing off the ground and organize it. And because on the 21st, we're going to have people respond like from, you know, Buenos Aires, Paris, Spain, you know, even the U.S. You know, Jan Aldrich is going to contribute, right?
Hmm.
Who, you know, I worked with in a couple things years ago. And
So it's called the International Academic and Civilian Ufological Community's Response
I
to
was
the
going to
U.S.
have,
Government Pentagon and UAP Task Force,
uh,
a
uh,
multi-metropolitan international press
yeah.
conference. I like it. I had
Yeah,
it
well,
queued up.
I just like it because, you know, it should bring out that world view, right? And the
Right.
people that are involved, it's a real mix. You get people that on there that are going to contribute, that are going to be pro
Do you
about
want me
this
to go
thing.
through the names or do you want me to?
Oh,
Because I have it
no,
up on
no,
the
I have no
screen.
needs. I just brought this up because it just shows the range. This is such a contrast to going to Shag Harbour and knocking on doors or, hey,
I know, and all of a sudden you're
but I
amongst.
think this is important too because, you know, I think it's important that the nation and these different views, you know, get to respond to the American situation in the U.S. Right.
Hmm.
The other thing I like is that this Quebec group has they're trying to bring people together. You know, there's so much schisms and fighting within the field, right? And
Uh,
I've been really impressed, you know, in what dealings I've had with them that their mission is very much the opposite. They're not trying to bend arms or change anyone's mind, but they're trying to bring this field together, you know,
right.
and that can't help but be a good thing. You know what I mean? But I
Hmm.
like the idea we're going to get international views in on this, you know, and hopefully we'll change their mind about us, you know, because when I've done European productions, like for a show, say, or you know, a Japanese magazine interview or TV in Finland or something, when they come here, it hasn't happened during COVID, but it has happened before. You
Hmm.
know, they look and they're puzzled, you know, and they describe us. They go, North America, the last bastion of the ETH. Well, you know, hopefully we'll change their minds about us too, because there's people like me who are a little open-minded, and there are certainly more than me. And there are people here that are so far down that range, they look at me and say, he's so close minded. But that's good. But we all get together, and I think this thing, you know, it's going to be a meeting of the minds for a change, and I think it's a good thing. And hopefully somebody from the Pentagon's listening or pays attention to this, you know, and
Well,
gives
one
up a
can
little
only
more.
hope.
I'm going to challenge them on it. I'm actually going to name specific cases where they're going to find data because you know, the Pentagon in that release, I forget what page it was near the end, they say that, you know, they got to figure out how to look beyond their own government military files, you know. And I made some suggestions to them where you can go and you're very likely to find something, you know. So
Hmm.
hopefully they're listening. Hopefully they do. Hopefully they'll have more releases and
Well,
we can all
here's
move
a
forward.
question for you,
Okay.
because a lot of people have speculated that with this preliminary disclosure,
Mm-hmm.
that they feel that they're going to be leading to like false flags, fear mongering. Oh no, we're going to be under attack. You get the TikTok video, you get things that come up, but they're always like they're being chased or under attack. They're not really just saying, "Oh yeah, well we're just seeing these things flying around. They're not bothering us." What are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think that this could be like some kind of interstellar War of the Worlds thing, or do you think that this is just a fear tactic, or is it anything? Right?
A fear tactic from who? The
The
aliens or
military,
from the
yeah. Oh no,
military?
we're under attack. There's
Oh,
reason we need to fear these people. I mean, Stephen Hawking believed that we should
oh yeah,
never
yeah. He,
project
yeah,
out to space and
yeah,
make us get
yeah.
it would be a weakness to us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that was kind of unfortunate. I was surprised at his point of view, where
Yeah,
we shouldn't send any messages out there, and any true
yeah,
contact, he said, would likely be what, unpleasant and harsh. You
yeah,
know, maybe reimagine that movie Independence Day again. When
yeah.
Red
I'm starting to
Stevensford.
think, you
No,
know,
my view is probably more like to pick another European, like somebody like Brian Cox.
right.
Who is much more the humanist and thinks, look, if somebody's going to span those distances or come this far, oh my God, they would have the power. They wouldn't need us for food or breeding stock or any of this foolishness. They could easily
Hmm.
solve that if you can span the distance by whatever, or the dimensions
Do you
or
think that
whatever
if
it is that's
anything, they're just
coming.
sharing space?
I don't know. Stanton used to say their purposes are their own, and I feel is that. I think we've been observed. I think it's not going to matter what we think in the end. There's little we could do about it, right?
Right,
But I
right.
don't think there's any reason to be fearful. We would have known long before now.
Hmm.
I It can seem fearful. I mean, even when you look at some of the pilots and some of the points they pick out are good. There were near misses with these things. There was a near miss the night before in Shag Harbour, right?
Yeah,
This happens. You think about the old Spielberg movie, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. That incident at the start, what they show in the Air Traffic Control Center in the Indianapolis airport, is, word for word and played out like the real incident that happened there, right? Well, if you're an air traffic controller, if you're sitting on that plane and you're having a near collision with a UFO or UAP, whatever you want to call it,
right.
it's going to be alarming. It's going to be disturbing. You might even become fearful. But, you know, we can't say for sure that there's been a collision yet. I mean, some have made the claim, but
Mm.
we don't know. But you know what I mean? That can happen anyway. I find the media, and I think this is a little worse in the U.S., they're quick to play that fear card. Sometimes for no
That's what
reason
I'm
other than to
saying.
get coverage. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
And, whether it's the pandemic or politics or whatever, like fear sells, right? Fear
Hmm.
promotes. And it's unfortunate. And I think this is something here, there's just no evidence to jump to anything like that yet. You observe, is it impossible? No, but it doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't think we've seen any indication of it yet, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Just another theory. But this is the part of the show where you promote yourself and you talk about what's coming up. We know you've got this event.
yeah.
Is there anything
Well, we
else
kind
coming
of
up?
did that.
Promote the books. Yeah, promote, promote, promote.
Well, yeah, I mean, anybody that wants, you say there's not a lot out there and it's hard to find something about Shag Harbor. Well, if they really want to, you can go to Amazon.com and get my latest book there. And I'm working on another, but boy, it's hard to find the time these days. I'm kind of in demand, and it isn't all ufology. I don't want you to
Nice. I
think I'm
like it.
making,
I
but I'm
like
a
it.
busy guy. I'm a busy
Good,
guy,
good.
and but yeah, the book is there, and of course we're hoping very much next year to pull off the Shag Harbor UFO Expo. And of course, we delay that, and of course the only concern there is that border. Got to get that border open. That's what I fear. So we can
Right.
bring up all that U.S. talent, because we get 5 good people coming up, and that kind of a unique conference where we can take people to the shore next day in the bus. Like I say, I've been to some great conferences south of the border. I miss them. I miss that one I used to go to every year in New Hampshire. That they used to have a great MUFON conference there. It was always
Hmm.
sold out, and it was a blast. I presented. I'd go even when I wasn't presenting. I loved it. But I haven't been to one down there yet that's going to be like this, where yes, you can meet the so-called experts like me. You can meet the original eyewitnesses. We're going to put you in a bus and take you right to the sites. And there's no
Nice.
controversy. It's not like Roswell where they say, it happened here, it happened here.
You can actually
Where it
go
happened,
and have a hope
yeah,
in looking and seeing.
all you got to hope for is that there's no fog.
Right. Right. There we
Yeah.
go. Um, Zach Man says, "Thank you for joining us again, Chris." He's like our third host. Keep up all the great work that you do. Have a good night, everyone. Have a safe weekend. So he just wanted to pass that on to you. So he's always in chat and did not miss you the first time. So then, if they want to, do you have a website? Do you have social media? Do you have anything? How
Oh,
can
I don't
people
do
reach out
social
to you?
media. I don't have a website. People get hold of me uh, by contacting the Shag Harbour Incident Society. They have a website. They're a bit of a buffer zone, but hell, they'll get through to me on anything, right?
They'll get through to you and just
Yeah,
keep the
I'm kind of a
crazies away.
digital hermit. In the early days, I went on social media and I thought, "Oh my God, I can't keep doing this." You know what I
There
mean?
we go.
There's
And
only
Wayne
so
says
much of me to go around, right?
that's hard.
But anybody really needs to get hold of me. They always seem to be able to. And like I say, they can start there. People in Shag Harbour will talk to you. They'll show you the hospitality. The message will get
Right.
through to me. Elliot knows how to get hold of me. You guys know how to get hold of me. So there you go. I rely on my friends.
Nice and easy. So, okay, if you really need to get a hold of him, I'll be the buffer. You can message me.
Yeah.
So Wayne says, "Thank you, Chris. Always a pleasure hearing you, sharing all your stories. And thank you. You folks are the highlight of my Thursday evenings. Well, thank you. Wednesday, too, I hope. So, but Chris, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you,
me again.
Chris.
Always, you know,
Sorry about the technical glitch.
it happens. It's live radio. It
I'll know
happens.
how to fix it the next time. It's never
There
happened
we go.
before. Yeah.
And let me know when that next book comes out, or you have something else coming up, and
I,
we'll
I,
get you
I
back on
will.
again anyway.
I will. Oh yeah, sometime. Like there's ones I wanted to talk, but we haven't even got to because everybody wants a little about Shag Harbour, and you start talking
Well,
about
I
the
just like
local
to do
stuff.
a recap for anybody who
Oh,
didn't
sure.
tune in the first time. So the next time we're booking into the
We'll
new
do
year
other
now, so we
provinces.
can.
We'll do PEI in Newfoundland next time.
I like it.
Yeah,
I
I've been
like it.
there. They know me. Okay.
I'll get you back on for sure. I love it.
All
I
right.
love the
God bless you.
stories.
Goodbye. Bye.
All right, darling. Thank you very much. Night, night.
Bye.
Well, we've come to the end of another fantastic segment here on the Outer Realm. Thank you for tuning in this evening. Thank you to everybody in chat. And of course, Chris Stiles, our special guest. And I've got a feedback again. um, so thank you to our producer, Joe Montaldo, for manning the fort behind the scenes and getting through the technical difficulties. Huge thank you to, of course, Folgers Coffee. Get yourself some Folgers, people. Perfect for sitting in on a segment with the Outer Realm. But thank you to Folgers for sponsoring tonight's show and all of our shows. We appreciate you. We love you. Remember to stop by the UFO Paranormal Radio Network YouTube channel, and of course that funky one that we keep getting, which is why am I brain tooting? UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. My gosh, there it is. Please subscribe. While you're at it, head on over to find us at the Outer Realm on Facebook and follow us on Instagram. Amelia keeps up with the pages pretty much head on, so you'll get all kinds of content there. If you'd like to see a specific guest or a topic on the show, or you have a complaint, or you just have something nice you want to say, or you have questions, even questions about our guests, please email us at theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. theouterrealmcontact@gmail.com. So next week, tune in again as we have, of course, more amazing guests. On Wednesday, for the very first time, we welcome Trey Hudson to the show, and he's going to be discussing, okay, brace yourselves, Skinwalker Ranch and UFOs. Now, Thursday night, we welcome back, of course, some of our favorites, which is Carl Cookson and Hamilton White of the new show, The Lost Relics, Part 2 of the original series Lost Relics of the Knights Templar. Now, it's always an off-the-cuff segment with these guys. They're hilarious, and they usually have a little show and tell for us. So who knows what's going to happen? Hopefully just a whole lot of shenanigans. So please tune in again. Have a great rest of the week. Have a fantastic weekend. And until then, Amelia and I, especially me at the moment, have a good night. Have a fantastic weekend. And we'll see you next week.